The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 14th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to the disciples, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you forever. This is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him, because he abides with you, and he will be in you. I will not leave you orphan. I am coming to you. In a little while the world will no longer see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you also will live. On that day you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. They who have my commandments and keep them are those who love me. And those who love me will be loved by my Father, and I will love them and reveal myself to them." This is the gospel of our Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Please be seated. Again, happy Mother's Day to everyone this morning. So when a baby is born, there is a lot of oohing and ahhing. Ever done that? Yeah? Okay. Good. And then the comparing begins to happen. She looks just like her mother. He has his father's nose. For good or ill, I suppose. Or she has her grandma's smile, or what a head of hair, just like his daddy's and grandpa's. Wow! Aunts and uncles get thrown into the mix too. Other extensions of the family. Especially if this is the first one. Everybody is excited. After comments like this, I usually take a look at the child, look at the person they're comparing the child to, and I don't know, I must have a bad aptitude for this. But I can't tell so usually. Especially when the child is small, like a newborn baby. They all look the same. Or close to it. Some have hair, some don't have hair. That's about it. I'm usually better at picking up on those things as the child gets older. As the child grows up, you can see resemblances a little bit more. And as they get older then, they begin to pick up some of their parents' mannerisms. Talking with their hands, or talking a lot, or asking questions, or being quiet, or all those things begin to show themselves. The ways parents and children laugh, or make a special face when they smile or frown. Or maybe they look the same when they're thinking about something. My grandson goes like this. You ask him a question, he goes, Not sure who that looks like. Maybe on the other side of the family. But it's interesting that we adults then are sometimes frightened when we hear ourselves talking to our children and we're like, I've heard that somewhere before. Said to me from my parents. And we're like, oh. As parents, we seem to like to connect with our children in this way. And as children, as we grow up, we have a certain measure of pride thinking like we look or act like one or both of our parents. Until, of course, we become teenagers. Then we're totally horrified by anything that might be the same. And I tell you, that horror really never goes away. Okay? It really doesn't. It actually intensifies as we get older and find ourselves looking and acting similarly. I will find myself looking in the mirror and making an expression and go, oh my gosh, that's my dad. Don't get me wrong, he's a good guy. But, you know, that teenage horror does not disappear. Being like our parents is both good and bad. I mean, our parents aren't perfect, right? So we pick up some of the good and some of the bad, and we like some of it and don't like other parts. In the area of health, it's neither good nor bad. Kind of important for us to know their history of health and how our grandparents were and their grandparents. And the more you know about your history, the better off you are in terms of figuring out your own health and what possibly be wrong with you. I have high blood pressure on both sides of my family, so I'm doomed. And I definitely have high blood pressure. But those things are important to know and helpful for us. When we talk about all these things stemming from our biological parents, we get a lot of things from the parents who raise us too if we're adopted. Although when you're adopted, sometimes you don't know a lot about your biological parents, and that can be hard knowing about your own health. But even so, we do pick up mannerisms and ways of being from the parents who raise us as well. The nice thing about Mother's Day, though, is that it's not about whether you look or act like your parents. It's not whether you carry on your mother's traits. But being a mother and having a mother is about love. That's what it's about. It's about loving someone so much and so completely that they become to us like an extension of ourselves. The relationship of parents to children is one relationship in our lives that shows us the power of love. But we parents and we children don't always get that right. Sometimes we're good, and when we do, when we show that love, it's miraculous. Other times, it can be painful when we don't get it right. But Jesus speaks of this kind of loving relationship with us as he is talking with his disciples. He tells them and us that he will not leave us orphaned. He tells us that he will not leave us without this kind of love in our lives. Jesus has left us the Spirit that will enfold us in God's love forever. Today in Jesus we are surrounded by love. A love that forgives us. A love that looks at us with those adoring eyes that a mother looks at her child. A love that longs to see God's face in our own. You see, in our lives we often reflect our parents, both in good and bad ways. We pick up the good habits and some bad habits. I am a fingernail biter. You may have noticed, I don't know, if you look at those things. My dad was a fingernail biter, so I'll blame him, I suppose. Although he doesn't bite them anymore, and I still do, so I think that's on me. But we are indeed a reflection of our parents in a lot of ways. And sometimes we like it, and sometimes we're horrified by it. But we need to remember we love our parents. Parents love us. And again, none of us are perfect. But each of us also has an adoptive parent. All of us are adopted at least in one sense. The sense that we have been adopted into God's family. Through holy baptism, Jesus has connected us, grafted us on to the family of God. God has adopted each of us as his children. And as we reflect our earthly parents, we also get to reflect God in our lives. And there is a wonderful positive aspect of being God's adoptive children. That while we reflect the good and the bad in our earthly parents, there's only one thing to reflect from God, and that's the good. Anything that comes from us, through us, that is good in the world comes from God. Now, all the bad, it's on you. It's on us, the bad. God doesn't reflect bad through us. He can't do that. He only reflects good. And the more we reflect God in our lives, the more we reflect this adoptive parent of ours, the more we come to live in the love God has for us and for the world. And so as we consider Mother's Day, let us help to reflect God more and more in our lives, so that the world can see God through us. The world knows what God's love is all about through us. And the more and more we do that, the more love will be in this world, and the more this world will become a better place to be. And as God looks upon us, maybe he will start oohing and aahing at us, saying, my, look at him. He cares for the poor. That's a good thing. That's how you do it. Or boy, she smiles so much like me, and look how people just come to her for help and care and just to listen. and see them waving their arms, reaching out helping hands to all those who need a hand, boy, they're becoming so much like me. That's what God longs to say for each of us. So the question for us really is, how much of God can we see in you? How much of God can the world see in us? Again, sometimes we do it well, sometimes not so much. But the more and more we listen to God, the more and more we listen to Jesus, the more his life will be reflected in our own. May God be reflected through everything we do, everything we say, and even through our smiles, so that the world can know God's love. Happy Mother's Day.